The group's annual report on the use of capital punishment found China continues to execute thousands of its citizens every year, though authorities don't disclose official data.
In a journey to understand the intricate landscape of justice and punitive measures in China, it is vital to navigate through various epochs and governmental frameworks. This video intends to shed light on some of the most discussed and documented punitive measures in China, aiming to bring forth a nuanced and well-rounded discussion. Let us delve into various facets of the topic, analyzed and presented through the prism of verified and reliable sources, respecting the gravity and complexity of the subject matter at hand. Number 1. The role of capital punishment in China. Analysis and cases. The role of capital punishment in China remains a focal point of discussions surrounding its legal and penal system, often inviting scrutiny and critique from various corners of the world. Capital punishment in China is administered for a range of offenses, including murder, drug trafficking, and even economic crimes, depending upon the gravity of the transgression. The nation maintains a policy of keeping the exact numbers of executions secret, but it is widely acknowledged that China executes more people annually than any other country in the world. Throughout history, the Chinese judicial system has undergone numerous reforms, gradually restricting the range of crimes punishable by death. Notably, in 2011, China removed 13 crimes from the video of capital offenses. Despite these changes, the application of the death penalty in China is still a matter of grave concern for human rights advocates globally. A handful of significant cases have brought international attention to China's use of capital punishment. These cases often involve intense media scrutiny, bringing to light the broader implications of the death penalty in the nation. For instance, the 2009 execution of British citizen Akmal Shaikh, convicted for drug trafficking, raised substantial diplomatic tensions and ignited a discourse on the death penalty's role and implementation in China. Simultaneously, the country has been showing a trend towards promoting the use of suspended death sentences, which can be converted to life imprisonment if the individual demonstrates good behavior during the probation period. This trend might indicate a gradual shift in China's stance towards capital punishment, aligning it more closely with global human rights standards. In analyzing the role of capital punishment in China, it is essential to consider the complex interplay of cultural, historical, and legal factors that influence its implementation. It remains a topic of continuous debate and evolving perspectives, reflecting China's intricate socio-legal landscape. Number 2. The re-education through labor system, a historical perspective. The re-education through labor system, also known as Laojiao, was a notorious punitive measure ingrained in China's law enforcement mechanism for several decades. Incepted in the 1950s, this administrative detention system allowed the police to detain individuals for up to 4 years without a formal trial. The stated objective was to reform offenders through labor and political indoctrination, targeting those who were perceived to be involved in minor offenses. This system faced considerable criticism for its opaque operation and the lack of judicial oversight. Critics argued that it offered a fertile ground for human rights violations, including forced labor and the mistreatment of detainees. Its usage often extended to suppressing political dissent, silencing activists, petitioners, and even targeting religious groups. Over time, it became a tool to stifle voices that seemed discordant with the official government narratives. However, acknowledging the criticisms and the changing perspectives on human rights, China decided to abolish the re-education through labor system in 2013. This abolition was seen as a positive step towards aligning the country's penal system with international human rights norms, emphasizing judicial process and transparency. This move was greeted with cautious optimism by human rights organizations and international bodies, seeing it as a sign of gradual reform in China's approach to punishment and law enforcement. A study of the re-education through labor system offers a glimpse into China's historical approach to punishment, reflecting the complex interplay of control, reform, and authority in its governance model. It also mirrors the changing perspectives on justice and human rights in China, illustrating a slow yet significant shift towards a more nuanced approach to penal policies. Number 3. The legal and judicial framework governing punishments in China. The intricate legal and judicial framework that governs punishments in China has undergone substantial transformations, particularly since the late 20th century. The foundational blueprint of this framework can be traced to the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, which delineates the essential principles of the nation's legal apparatus. Moreover, a spectrum of laws, including the criminal law of the PRC, stipulates the specific offenses and the corresponding penalties. In an effort to modernize and align its legal structure with international standards, China has initiated a series of reforms aiming to ensure fairness and transparency in the judicial process. An essential element in this evolution has been the concept of ruling the country according to law, which emphasizes legal literacy, predictable legal rulings, and the protection of citizens' rights. Furthermore, efforts are being made to minimize corruption within the judicial system, promoting a culture of accountability and integrity. An integral part of China's judicial framework is the court system, comprising the Supreme People's Court, High People's Courts at the provincial level, and lower-level People's Courts. These institutions are responsible for implementing the laws and administering justice, functioning within a hierarchy that maintains a degree of centralized control. Despite these reforms, concerns about the autonomy and impartiality of the judiciary continue to persist. The Communist Party of China retains a significant influence over the judicial process, a factor that has often been critiqued for potentially undermining the independence and fairness of judicial decisions. Navigating the legal and judicial landscape of China requires a nuanced understanding of its evolving nature. It is a structure that simultaneously embodies centuries-old philosophies and modern reforms, striving to balance tradition with the demands of a rapidly changing society. The journey towards a more transparent and just legal system is ongoing, marked by both achievements and challenges. Number 4. The Laogai System: Insights and Implications. The Laogai system, formally established in the 1950s, stands as a significant aspect of China's penal history, reflecting the government's approach to punishment and correction. The term Laogai, which translates to reform through labor, essentially embodied a network of forced labor camps where prisoners were subjected to strenuous labor, political indoctrination, and often severe living conditions. This system sought to reform criminals through labor and ideological education, echoing a deeply rooted belief in rehabilitation through hard work. Amid mounting pressure and a changing global perspective on human rights, the Chinese government officially abolished the Laogai system in 2013, signaling a significant shift in its approach to incarceration and punishment. This move was interpreted by many as an acknowledgement of the system's failings and a step towards fostering a more humane approach to justice. The abolition was followed by efforts to integrate modern correctional philosophies that focus on the rehabilitation and reintegration of prisoners into society. An analysis of the Laogai system provides critical insights into the historical context of punishment in China, portraying a complex picture of authority, control, and reform. The transition away from this system signals a broader shift in China's penal philosophy, albeit with lingering questions about the nation's commitment to upholding human rights within its correctional facilities. This chapter strives to explore these nuances, offering a balanced view of the implications and legacy of the Laogai system in China's judicial narrative. Number 5. Corporal punishments in historical context. Tracing back through China's extensive history, corporal punishments have periodically played a substantial role in the justice system. In ancient times, punishments were often harsh and physical, rooted in the philosophy of deterring others from committing similar offenses. Methods ranged from beatings to more severe forms of bodily harm, showcasing a punitive approach to justice that was prevalent across many ancient civilizations. Historically, China's dynastic rulers employed a variety of corporal punishments, including caning, whipping, and mutilation, reserved for those who transgressed the established legal norms. The enforcement of these punishments was rigid, aiming to establish social order and hierarchy. This punitive methodology was largely rooted in Confucian principles that emphasized social harmony and adherence to moral values. As China ventured into modernity, significant shifts were observed in its approach to punishments. The turn of the 20th century marked a transition towards a more codified legal system, gradually phasing out traditional forms of corporal punishment. This shift was accelerated with the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, which ushered in legal reforms aimed at aligning the nation's judicial system with modern principles of justice and human rights. The abolishment of corporal punishments represents a broader transformation in China's approach to justice, from physical coercion to a more rehabilitative and correctional philosophy. Modern China showcases an evolved judicial landscape, where emphasis is placed on reforming individuals rather than inflicting physical pain as a form of retribution. A contemplation of this historical transition offers a nuanced understanding of China's evolving perspective on justice, punishment, and human dignity, highlighting a journey from harsh corporal penalties to a legal system that seeks to balance punitive measures with the principles of rehabilitation and societal reintegration. Number 6. Detention centers and their conditions. Reports and testimonies. In recent years, the conditions within Chinese detention centers have attracted global attention, raising several critical human rights concerns. Reports and first-hand testimonies from these centers have painted a picture of overcrowding, inadequate medical care, and instances of physical and psychological abuse. It is vital to scrutinize these accounts to understand the depth of the issues surrounding detention centers in China. The Chinese government has generally maintained that these centers are committed to upholding the law and ensuring societal stability. They assert that the facilities are designed to reform and rehabilitate individuals who have contravened the law, pointing to educational programs and vocational training as evidence of their reformative approach. In response to the growing international scrutiny, there have been indications of reforms and improvements in detention center conditions. These initiatives aim to enhance the transparency of the judicial process and improve the living conditions within these centers, aligning them more closely with internationally recognized standards of human rights. As we analyze the complexities surrounding detention centers and their conditions in China, it becomes imperative to approach the topic with a balanced perspective. While acknowledging the reports and testimonies that highlight significant human rights concerns, it is equally important to note the efforts being undertaken to reform and improve the system. This chapter seeks to offer an in-depth analysis of these aspects, navigating through a topic that remains at the forefront of discussions on justice and human rights in China. Number 7. Death penalty and its application. A comprehensive review. The implementation of the death penalty in China has been a significant subject of international discourse, encompassing debates on legality, morality, and human rights. Historically, China has had a high rate of executions, with a vast array of crimes, including non-violent offenses, qualifying for the death penalty. This practice has often positioned China at the center of global discussions on capital punishment and its ethical implications. Over the years, China has embarked on a path of reform concerning the death penalty, with a notable reduction in the number of crimes punishable by death. A pivotal moment came in 2007, when the Supreme People's Court regained the authority to review all death penalty cases, a move aimed at ensuring greater judicial scrutiny and reducing wrongful convictions. This reform represented a significant step towards establishing a more judicious application of the death penalty, fostering a system that emphasizes legal accuracy and fairness. In recent times, there has been an increasing trend towards the imposition of suspended death sentences, which, subject to good behavior, can be commuted to life imprisonment. This evolution showcases a nuanced approach to capital punishment, which seeks to balance the demands of justice with the principles of humanity and rehabilitation. Despite these reforms, the application of the death penalty in China continues to be a subject of critical analysis and debate. Critics argue that the lack of transparency surrounding executions and the continued use of the death penalty for nonviolent crimes are areas that require further reform. As we delve deeper into this complex issue, this chapter aims to provide a comprehensive review of the death penalty in China, examining its historical roots, recent developments, and the ongoing debates that surround its application in the contemporary Chinese legal landscape. Number 8. Torture and ill treatment in detention. Documented instances. Torture and ill treatment in detention centers remain deeply troubling aspects of the human rights landscape in China. Over the years, numerous reports and testimonies have emerged, painting a distressing picture of the conditions that many detainees face. Documented instances indicate a pattern of physical and psychological abuse that transcends individual cases, suggesting systemic issues within the detention framework. Reports from various human rights organizations have documented instances of torture, including beatings, use of electric shocks, and other forms of physical violence. Moreover, detainees have reported undergoing psychological torment, including solitary confinement and deprivation of basic needs, as methods of coercion or punishment. These practices not only infringe upon the human rights of detainees but also violate international treaties and conventions that China is a party to. It's essential to approach this delicate topic with a focus on verifiable instances, maintaining an objective stance in analyzing the available data. The aim is to foster a dialogue that encourages transparency, accountability, and the ultimate eradication of torture and ill treatment in detention centers. As we navigate through the narrative surrounding this topic, this chapter seeks to present a nuanced perspective on documented instances of torture and ill treatment in detention centers in China, exploring the intricacies of a complex and often disturbing reality within the penal system. Number 9. Religious persecutions, cases, and concerns. Religious persecutions in China have garnered significant attention globally, posing serious concerns about freedom of belief and the right to practice one's faith without fear of repression. Over the years, the Chinese government has been accused of undertaking systematic campaigns to suppress religious groups that are perceived as threats to the state's authority or the societal harmony promoted by the Communist Party. Cases involving the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners have been particularly prominent, with numerous reports of arrests, detentions, and alleged instances of torture and ill treatment. This spiritual group, which combines meditative practices with moral philosophy, has faced a relentless crackdown since 1999, characterized by widespread human rights violations. Furthermore, other religious communities, including Christians and Tibetans, have also faced restrictions and scrutiny from the state. Churches have been demolished and religious symbols removed as the state attempts to exert control over religious narratives and institutions. Amidst this backdrop, it is vital to approach this subject with a nuanced understanding, considering the geopolitical implications and the complex interplay of factors contributing to religious persecution in China. This chapter intends to delve into the multifaceted realm of religious persecutions in China, bringing to light documented cases and ongoing concerns, while fostering a dialogue that underscores the importance of religious freedom and human dignity in contemporary society. Number 10. Criminal justice reforms, the shift in punishment paradigms. In recent decades, China has embarked on a journey of reform within its criminal justice system, signaling a noteworthy shift in punishment paradigms. The Chinese authorities have gradually moved away from highly punitive approaches to a system that incorporates elements of rehabilitation and restorative justice. This transition signifies China's efforts to align its penal policies more closely with international norms and standards. Key developments include the reduction in the number of offenses punishable by death, a move indicative of a softer stance on capital punishment. Moreover, the judiciary has exhibited a growing preference for suspended death sentences, which can potentially be commuted to life imprisonment, offering a glimpse into a more humane approach to criminal justice. Nevertheless, the journey towards a fully reformed criminal justice system is ongoing. Critics highlight areas where further improvements are necessary, pointing to lingering concerns over the use of torture and ill treatment in detention centers and restrictions on freedoms of expression and assembly. In navigating through the complexities of China's evolving criminal justice landscape, this chapter aims to delineate the significant shifts observed in the punishment paradigms in recent years. By evaluating the progress achieved and the challenges that remain, this analysis seeks to provide a comprehensive view of China's efforts to reform its criminal justice system, while recognizing the persistent calls for greater transparency, accountability, and adherence to human rights principles. Number 11. The sentencing process and its criticisms, a detailed study. In China, the sentencing process has frequently been a focal point of critique, with several observers pointing to perceived inconsistencies and lack of transparency as primary concerns. Critics argue that the judicial system, which operates under the auspices of the Chinese Communist Party, sometimes seems to prioritize maintaining social stability and political control over ensuring impartiality and justice. Detractors assert that this influence can result in biased sentencing, with hefty penalties for those who dissent or challenge the government's stance. Moreover, the extensive use of administrative detentions, where individuals can be held without a formal trial process, has raised alarms. These procedures bypass the conventional judicial oversight, creating avenues for potential abuse and miscarriage of justice. Critics also point to the constrained access to legal representation and the reported use of forced confessions as significant issues marring the sentencing process. Despite these criticisms, it should be noted that efforts have been initiated to streamline the sentencing process and the reported use of forced confessions as significant issues marring the sentencing process. Despite these criticisms, it should be noted that efforts have been initiated to streamline the sentencing process, with revisions in criminal procedure laws aiming to enhance the fairness and transparency of the legal system. This chapter aims to delineate the nuances of the sentencing process in China, highlighting both the criticisms and the steps taken towards reforms to foster a multifaceted understanding of the complexities involved. Number 12. Human rights concerns and international reactions. The human rights landscape in China has been a perennial point of tension in the international arena. Concerns over restrictions on freedom of speech, assembly, and religion, coupled with reports of harsh treatment of detainees and suppression of minority groups, have invited widespread criticism. International bodies, including the United Nations and various human rights organizations, have frequently raised alarms over the alleged violations occurring within China's borders. Simultaneously, China has defended its policies, emphasizing its sovereign right to maintain social harmony and national security. The government asserts that its approach to human rights is grounded in its unique historical, cultural, and social context, which may not always align with Western notions of human rights. The international reactions to China's human rights record have varied, with some nations adopting a confrontational stance, imposing sanctions, or raising the issue in international forums, while others have preferred dialogue and engagement. This chapter seeks to examine the intricate dynamics surrounding human rights concerns in China and the diverse range of international reactions, providing a balanced perspective on an issue that remains at the forefront of global geopolitics and diplomacy. Number 13. Case studies, notable trials and their outcomes. In recent years, several trials in China have captured the attention of both national and international audiences, becoming landmarks in the discourse on the country's justice system. Notable cases have included prominent human rights activists, lawyers, and journalists, whose trials have sometimes been viewed as a reflection of the broader political and societal dynamics in China. These trials have often brought to light the underlying tensions between state control and individual liberties. Some of the outcomes have been criticized for perceived lack of procedural fairness and alleged political motivations. The sentences handed down in these cases have sometimes been seen as a message from the government, illustrating its stance on dissent and opposition. On the other hand, China has also witnessed a growing number of economic and corruption-related trials, showcasing the government's efforts to clamp down on graft and maintain social harmony. These trials are part of a broader campaign to foster a cleaner and more accountable governance structure. Through an exploration of notable trials and their outcomes, this chapter aims to offer insights into the intricacies of China's judicial process, reflecting both the criticisms and the government's perspective on justice and social order. Number 14. Media representation and coverage of punishments in China. Media representation of punishments in China has often been a contentious subject, fraught with accusations of bias, misinformation, and propaganda. Internationally, the media tends to focus on high-profile cases, especially those involving human rights activists or ethnic minority groups, often presenting a critical view of the Chinese legal system. Within China, the state-controlled media has a significant role in shaping public opinion about punishments and the judicial system. The coverage often highlights the government's efforts to maintain social stability and law and order, portraying a determined stance against crime and corruption. However, critics argue that this media narrative sometimes lacks depth and fails to provide a comprehensive view of the complexities involved in the justice system. This chapter endeavors to unpack the intricacies of media representation in China, exploring how punishments and legal proceedings are portrayed in both domestic and international media. Through a balanced analysis, this section seeks to present a nuanced understanding of the media dynamics at play, highlighting the implications of media representation on public perceptions and international relations. Number 15. Looking ahead, the prospects of reform and change in the penal system. As China strides into a new era marked by remarkable economic growth and increasing global influence, the country stands at a critical juncture concerning the evolution of its penal system. A host of challenges remain, necessitating concerted efforts towards fostering a legal environment that embodies justice, fairness, and respect for human rights. The prospects of reform and change in the penal system hence become an issue of paramount significance. In recent years, glimpses of potential reform have surfaced, with the government initiating several legal amendments aimed at enhancing the transparency and fairness of the judicial process. The emphasis on rule of law has been increasingly featured in official rhetoric, signaling a possible shift towards a more open and accountable legal framework. Moreover, international collaboration and exchanges have been fostering a dialogue, which could potentially influence China's approach to penal policies, bringing it more in line with global norms and expectations. However, the path to substantial reform is fraught with challenges. Deep-seated cultural, historical, and political factors shape the functioning of China's penal system, and altering this complex web of influences requires a nuanced and well-strategized approach. Critics argue that more substantial strides need to be made in terms of safeguarding individual rights and curtailing state excesses. The global community watches with keen interest, as the unfolding dynamics in China's penal system could have far-reaching implications on the country's domestic stability and international relations. As we delve into this chapter, the objective remains to analyze the potential pathways and prospects of reform in China's penal system, drawing upon various perspectives to construct a nuanced narrative. Through an in-depth exploration of the emerging trends and future possibilities, this chapter aims to offer a comprehensive insight into the complex dynamics shaping the future of penal policies in China, shedding light on the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.